Zacchaeus sought to see Jesus, who he was. It says, but he could not see him for the press, for the crowd, because he was little of stature. Now, Luke is a medical doctor, so he gives us a lot of descriptions, and he tells us something about him that I believe gives us the beginning of his drama. Zacchaeus is a man of drama because Luke tells us something about his body. He says that he's short in stature. Wanted to see Jesus, but couldn't see Jesus because of the crowd, and he was little in stature. And when you study the first century world, it's interesting that the average height for a Jewish male was between 5'4" and 5'6" in the first century world. The average Jewish man, the average height, 5 feet 4 inches to 5 feet 6 inches. That was the average height for a first century Jewish male. You with me? Now, what is interesting about this is if 5 feet 4 inches is the average height for a first century Jewish male, Luke says that Zacchaeus couldn't see the crowd for he was short in stature. Which means that if the average height is 5 feet 4 inches and Zacchaeus is short in stature, that means that Zacchaeus was not even 5 feet 4 inches tall. So it required me to dig a little deeper. And then I discovered that some scholars suggest that Zacchaeus was in between 4 feet 8 inches and 4 feet 10 inches. As a matter of fact, scholars suggest that he had maybe a dwarf gene, is how it is described. That he has a physical limitation. And I believe that physical limitation affected him in ways that lasted throughout his lifetime. I want to kind of contextualize Zacchaeus for you. He's short in stature. He's vertically challenged. So imagine Zacchaeus as a kid. If you let me put it in our own context, imagine Zacchaeus has been the child who wants to play basketball with the fellas at the Gresham Park on Jerusalem Boulevard. And imagine whenever Zacchaeus went out there to play basketball, when they were selecting teams, that everybody was selected to participate in the game except Zacchaeus, because he's short in stature. Imagine Zacchaeus going to Six Flags on Judah Avenue, wanting to ride the Scream Machine or the Mind Bender or the Free Fall. And as he gets in line, he stood in line for 40 minutes to be able to get on the Scream Machine. And as he gets near the place to get on board, there's a sign there that has a height requirement. And the sign says, if you are beneath the sign that's on the ruler, then you can't ride this ride unless you get your mama to ride with you. Imagine Zacchaeus. Imagine Zacchaeus trying to change the light bulbs in the room, like perhaps an older sibling, but a chair won't allow him to reach it. A ladder won't allow him to reach it, even because of his own frailty. Imagine Zacchaeus getting ready to ask a girl out for the junior and senior prom. And of all the young ladies that he wanted to ask to go out with him to the prom, nobody would say yes. Because the young ladies would wear their heels and have their hair fixed and elevated at a high point. And no young lady wanted to go to the prom with Zacchaeus because he's short in stature. Do y'all see that? His entire life, he has been viewed by his limitations. And because he was small in size, now perhaps he's internalized that. He believes he's small in value. Now, Zacchaeus is dealing with rejection, perhaps because of something that was not even his fault. I mean, his own height was not something that he chose. It was not his fault. He's deemed to be beneath average. As a matter of fact, sometimes even manhood was correlated to a person's size. Even today, 2,000 years later, you hear some ladies use the adage, I like my men tall, dark, and handsome. Even in corporate America, it's been said that certain CEOs, that 75% of CEOs of Fortune 500 companies are over 6 feet tall. There is a height bias that's in the Western world. And Zaccheus is dealing with this 2,000 years ago. He's dealing with shortness. Maybe it was a generational shortness. Maybe he's Zaccheus the third. Maybe his granddaddy, Zaccheus Sr., had the same issue. His dad, Zaccheus Jr., had the same issue. Maybe there's a dwarf gene pool. That's something that has affected him that was not his fault. Something beyond his control, but it has kind of set the foundation for the rest of his life. Have you ever dealt with something that was painful, but it was your fault? You'd be surprised how many children are now dealing in their 20s and 30s and 40s with issues of molestation. Something they experienced as a child that has had an adverse effect on their life, but it was something that they didn't choose. Have you ever walked into something that was beyond your control? You didn't ask for, things happen. You were short, you've been little your entire life, and yet his entire life, he feels excluded. Sometimes life will hit you because you didn't expect it. The phone call of death, the termination, the diagnosis. Sometimes in life, brothers and sisters, we can go through a drama and a dramatic situation, and it starts somewhere. I believe that Zaccheus struggled because of his issue, and it affected him later on in his life. So that's the beginning of his drama. But number two, let me give you the brokenness that influenced his decisions. I said the brokenness that influenced his decisions. So guess what? So his entire life, he has had to deal with being less than. He's been viewed as being not measuring up. His entire life, he's been viewed as below average, rejected on the courts, not seen as normal. And he's had to internalize that and live his own life. And now, because of something that happens to him, perhaps he believes that about himself. Wow. And so he's carried this his entire life. He's carried this beneath average. He's carried this rejection. He's carried this not being good enough. He's carried generational traumas, perhaps. And now that he's matured and he's of age, he is grown in age, but he's not outgrown all the pain and the questions concerning something that was beyond his control. So you know what he says he's going to do? He says, I've got to find a way to finally make myself appear larger than what I am. Since I've been rejected my entire life, seen as less than and not good enough, I don't meet their prerequisites. I got to find something I can do that makes me feel bigger. I need to mask my insecurities. I need to mask my rejections. And I need to show everybody who thinks I'm not good enough, that I don't measure up to their standards. I got to find something that makes me even. I got to level the playing field. So what does he do? His physiology now affects what he does vocationally. He chooses a profession. He says, I'm going to work for the Roman IRS. I'm going to become an IRS agent for Rome. He is a Jew who's going to work for the Roman government. The Roman government was totally disenfranchising the Jewish people. They were marginalizing and oppressing the Jewish people. They're in control. And Zaccheus says, I want to work for them. So he took a job called a publican. The publican were Jewish tax collectors by culture who worked for the Roman government. They were hated. Just like you and I don't like the IRS, they didn't like them either. The difference is he's a Jew who works for the Roman government. He's a publican. He was despised. Nobody liked the publicans, not just because they worked for the Romans, but they didn't like the publicans like Zaccheus, because what the publicans would do, say for instance, somebody owed $3,000 for their taxes. What the publicans would do is go find the person who owed $3,000, and they would tell them, you owe $5,000. And then they would take the $3,000 to pay off their debt to Rome. They would take $2,000 and put in their own pockets to enrich themselves. This is what the publicans did. So the Jewish people, Jewish publicans took advantage of their own people to make the wealthy wealthier and make the poor poorer. I said the publicans would take money from the poor to satisfy the greed of the wealthy.